Hi, this is Becky Spain, your instructor for business communication. Today we will be looking at Chapter 12 of Excellence in Business Communication. This chapter will take up where Chapter 11 left off, and we will start with the second step of the writing process for reports and proposals. So our first learning objective is to explain how to adapt your audiences when writing reports and proposals and describe the choices involved in drafting report and proposal content. So this chapter builds on the writing techniques and ideas that we learned in Chapter 5, but we'll also look at several concepts that are particularly important when you're preparing longer messages, such as when writing reports or proposals. So the writing stage is where you make all of your ideas and your research and your preparation from the planning stage come alive. We're going to also touch briefly on creating effective visuals, which are vital for helping many of the reports and proposals come alive, as well as a quick look at website and wiki content. So as with writing shorter messages, you need to take a few moments before you start writing to make sure that you are ready to adapt your approach to your audience. And of course, we'll start by looking at the you attitude. So reports and proposals can put heavy demands on your readers. Sometimes they're very complicated and they're long. So you really want to take the you attitude before you begin to write, and you want to try to strike a balance between being overly formal in your writing and overly informal. So if you know your readers reasonably well and your report is likely to be met with approval, you can generally adopt an informal tone. To make your tone less formal, speak to readers in the first person and refer to them as you and refer to yourself as I. But if you need a more formal tone, you want to use an impersonal journalism style. You're going to provide a balance of information. You're going to avoid your personal opinion, and you're going to build an argument on provable facts. When you're writing, make sure that you eliminate personal pronouns. Don't use humor. Don't overuse similes or metaphors or colorful adjectives. Make sure that when you're doing that you take care. And if you are writing cross-culturally, remember that communicating with people in other cultures often calls for more formality in reports. And remember that sometimes a casual language translates poorly, so be very careful with using casual language. Stick to more formal. All right, the next step, drafting report content. You can simplify writing a report by breaking the job into three main sections: your introduction, your body, and then the close. The introduction is the first section of any report or proposal, and it puts the report in context for the reader. It's going to introduce your subject, it's going to preview your main ideas, and it's going to establish the tone of your document. Now the body is usually the meat of what you're writing. It's going to present, analyze, and interpret the information gathered during your investigation, and it's going to support your recommendations or your conclusions. And then finally, the closing is the final section in the text of the report or the proposal, and it emphasizes your main points. It's going to summarize the benefits and the course of action, and it's going to bring action items together in one place. So the following several slides will cover these three main sections. So let's begin by looking more specifically at the introduction to your report. So remember that the introduction is going to establish the context. It's going to identify the subject and preview main ideas if you're using the direct approach. It's also going to establish the tone and reader relationship. So typical report introductions include most, if not all, of the elements listed on the slide. Authorization. You want to recognize who authorized the report, if that's applicable to what you're writing about. Next, you're going to explain the reasons for the report's existence and what the report will achieve. Next, you're going to describe what will and won't be covered in the report or the scope of the report. And then finally, you're going to give the background of the report. You're going to review historical conditions or factors that led up to the report. Your introduction should also discuss the primary and secondary sources consulted and the methods used. It's going to list terms and their definitions, including any terms that might be misinterpreted in the report. Terms may also be defined in the body or in the notes or the glossary. You're going to list any limitations of the report. You'll want to note any factors that were beyond your control that could affect the quality of the report. And then finally, you're going to address the organization of the report. You're going to identify the topics that you're going to cover and in what order you're going to cover them. Then let's look at the body of the report. So in the body, you want to present relative information and then support your recommendations or any conclusions. The body section of a typical report will contain most, if not all, of the elements that we have listed on the next couple of slides. It's going to first of all give explanations, any details of the problem, project, or idea. That will be followed by facts or statistical evidence or trends. You want to lay out the results of studies that you've investigated. Next, you want to discuss any potential courses of action. Then you want to move on to criteria or benchmarking. You want to describe the benchmarks for evaluating opinions and alternatives. Finally, you'll move to conclusions and recommendations and discuss what you believe the evidence reveals and then what you propose should be done about that. And then finally, the last thing in your body of the report is the support. You're going to give the reasons behind your conclusions and your recommendations. This, of course, will lead you to the close of your report. And in the closing section, you're going to summarize your key points. You're going to emphasize benefits of any recommendations that you've made. And then you're also going to list any action items. So this section is usually labeled as summary or conclusions and recommendations. What you include here can vary based on whether you're writing in the direct approach or the indirect approach and whether you've requested a specific course of action. So for the direct approach, you want to summarize key points. List those key points in the order in which they appear in the body of your work and briefly restate your conclusions or your recommendations. Now remember that if it's a short report, this might not be applicable for medium and long reports. This would certainly be applicable. If you've used the indirect approach, haven't already done this at the end of the body, present your conclusions and your recommendations. If you are seeking to motivate an action, you need to spell out exactly what should happen next and provide a schedule with specific task assignments. I know this is a lot of information to take in verbally, so let me just make sure that you note on pages 365 and 366 in your textbook, there are some great examples of these writing samples. Take a minute and read through those and note the layout and how they're applying these points that we've just gone through on the previous slides. So next, let's look at drafting proposal content. Now, research report writing guidelines apply to proposals too, but proposals have some unique consideration. So the general purpose of any proposal is to persuade the readers to do something. So your proposal must sell your audience on the ideas, the products, services, methods, and the company. Just as with any persuasive message, you can use the AIDA plan to gain attention, build interest, create desire, and motivate action. So to strengthen your argument, make sure that you demonstrate your knowledge. Make sure that you provide concrete information and examples. If your proposal is competing with others, you need to do some research on that competition so that you know what others might be proposing to the audience that you're going to be proposing to. And remember that your readers are going to prejudge the quality of your products and services by the quality of the proposal that you've given them. So make sure that your proposal is letter perfect, that it's inviting, and that it's readable, because this all lends to your credibility. So let's begin by looking at the introduction in a proposal. The introduction is going to identify the problem that you tend to solve or the opportunity that you want to pursue with your audience. So begin with background information or the statement of the problem. Briefly review the situation and establish a need for action, and explain how things could be better, or convince your readers that an opportunity exists. Next, briefly describe the change you propose and highlight your key selling points and their benefits to show how your proposal will solve your audience's problem. Remember your scope, state the boundaries of the proposal and what you will and will not do, and then also go over the organization of the proposal. Orient your reader to the remainder of the proposal and call attention to the major divisions of thought that will help them as they read through what you've given them. Next, you want to set up the body of your proposal. You're going to use the body to complete details on the proposed solution and describe anticipated results. So begin with your facts and your evidence that are going to support the conclusions that are coming. Next, you're going to describe the concept, the product, or the services. Make sure that you stress reader benefits and emphasize any advantages you have over your competitors. Next, you're going to look at the work plan schedule. Describe how you'll accomplish what must be done. You can explain the steps that you'll take, their timing, the methods or the resources that you'll use, and the people who will be responsible. State when your work will begin and how it will be divided into stages, when you'll finish, and whether or not follow-up will be needed. Next, you're going to provide some statements of qualifications. You're going to describe your organization's expertise, their personnel, even their facilities, anything that relates to the reader's needs, and include a list of client references. Finally, you're going to go over the proposed costs. Prove that the costs are realistic. Break them down so that readers can see the cost of labor, materials, transportation, travel, training, and any other applicable categories. And then you'll move to the close of your proposal. In the closing section, you're going to summarize key points. You're going to emphasize those benefits and advantages, and you're going to ask for a decision from the readers. So you're going to begin by reviewing your argument. Then you're going to review the benefits. Then you're going to review the merits of your approach. You're going to briefly summarize why your approach will be more effective than other alternatives, perhaps, that they've been pitched. You're going to restate your qualifications, and then you're going to finally end with your request. So you're going to actually ask for a decision from the reader. So I know that when you've written this proposal, you've spent hours on preparing to write it, following all of these steps, and you hope that your audience is going to read each and every word. But the fact of the matter is that many of your reports are going to be browsed, or they're going to be used to quickly find information of interest to the reader. So there are some tools that you can use to give your readers a sense of overall structure of your document and keep them on track, and as well as providing them a way to browse if that's what they're doing, or to give them a reference back for quick information. So the first thing that you want to do is use headings and subheadings. So these are brief titles that cue your reader about the content of that section. They improve a reader's readability and are especially useful markers for clarifying the framework of a report. Next, you're going to use transitions. Transitions are words or phrases that tie ideas together and show how one thought is related to another, and help a reader move from one section of a report to the next. And depending on the length of the report, such transitions can be words or sentences, or sometimes, depending on the length, can even be a complete paragraph. And the third tip is that you're going to use a preview section to introduce an important topic and help your reader get ready for the new information. So previews are particularly helpful when the information is complex, and review sections come after a body of material and summarize the information for your readers. Reviews help your reader absorb details while keeping on track of the big picture. So remember that if there's a lot of information, you want to do everything that you can to help your reader to understand, follow along, and digest as they go through your report. And finally, make the process as easy on yourself as possible by taking advantage of all available productivity tools. For example, the size and complexity of many reports make templates or style sheets particularly helpful. If you include graphics or spreadsheets or databases, there's a chance that these might be produced in other programs, so make sure you know how your writing software handles the file connection. And be sure to explore your media and channel options. So video clips, animation, presentation slides, and screencasts. Other media elements can enhance the communication and persuasion of power of the written word. So make sure that you explore those options as well. So moving on to learning objective number 2. Identify 5 characteristics of effective writing in online reports and explain how to adapt your writing approach for wikis. So in addition to standalone reports and proposals, you may be asked to write in-depth content for your website or to collaborate on a wiki. So the basic principles of report writing apply to both formats, but each have some unique considerations as well. So let's take a look at what those are. So for drafting website content, there are 5 elements on the next couple of slides that will help you to draft effective online content. First, of course, is to build trust with your audience. So as you know, sometimes readers are skeptical of online content, so you need to look for opportunities to build trust with your audience. You need to make sure that your content is accurate, that it's current. That's really important. I can't tell you how many websites I look at that the information is not current, and my first thought is that the company is not keeping up with the game, and automatically you discount them. Make sure that your information is complete. Next, you want to adapt to a global audience. So this is complicated and sometimes it can be expensive, and some companies compromise by localizing the homepage and key secondary pages while keeping the deeper, more detailed content in its original language. The next step is to remember to create reader-oriented content. So compelling, reader-oriented content is crucial to your success. Whenever possible, use your inverted pyramid style. Consider the most important information briefly at first and then gradually reveal successive layers of detail. And remember, with the inverted pyramid, the most important things come first, and then as you continue on through your writing, less important things are mentioned. That's a great way to write when you're considering your online audience, because what are the chances that they're going to make it all the way through to the end? And in today's quick hits for information, chances are probably fairly slim that most people who start are going to also finish. So the inverted pyramid can be very useful. You want to use concise, skimmable format. Same reason. People are, especially whenever you're online, quickly skimming, looking for things that are of interest to them. And then finally, you want to compose effective links, since these serve both as site navigation and then also for content skimming. So collaborating on wikis. So the benefit of wikis are compelling, but they do require a unique approach to writing. So to be valuable, a wiki contributor, you need to remember that as a writer, as a contributor, you need to let go of traditional expectations of authorship. So the value of a wiki stems from the collective insight of all of its contributors. You also need to remember that team members sometimes need to be encouraged to edit and improve each other's works. You want to use templates or other formatting options to ensure that your content fits the same style as the rest of the wiki. And if you're new to writing in wikis, you might want to take advantage of the sandbox. This is a safe, non-published section of the wiki where team members can practice writing and editing before publishing. Wikis usually have guidelines to help contributors integrate their work into the group's ongoing effort. Make sure you familiarize yourself with those guidelines and don't be afraid to ask for help. So if you're creating a new wiki, think through your long-term purpose carefully, just as you would if you were creating a new blog or a new podcast channel. And in doing this, it will help you to craft appropriate guidelines and also security policies. If you are adding a page or an article to an already existing wiki, figure out how this new material fits in with the existing structure of the wiki and find out if any similar material already exists. It might be better to expand on an existing article than to create a whole new item. And if you don't agree with published content and you want to revise it, you need to use the wiki's discussion facility to share your concerns with other contributors. If it's a well-run wiki, it will actually encourage discussions and even robust disagreements as long as everyone remains respectful. Okay, and learning objective number 3, illustrating your reports with effective visuals. We're going to discuss 6 principles of graphic design and identify the most common types of visuals used to present data, information, concepts, and ideas. So well-designed visual elements can actually enhance the communication power of your message and in some instances even replace some of your words. So visuals can often convey certain message points more effectively and more efficiently than using words. So let's begin by understanding visual literacy. It is the ability to create visual images and interpret visual messages, and it has become an essential business skill. So creating effective visuals requires the use of some basic principles, and the first one is, consistency. So your audience is going to view the series of visuals as a whole and assume that the design elements will be consistent from one page to the next. So you need to try to achieve visual parallelism throughout by the use of color, shape, size, texture, position, scale, and typeface. You want to make sure that these are all consistent. You want to also consider your contrast. Readers expect your visual distinctions to match your verbal ones. So to emphasize differences or depict items, you can use contrasting color. To emphasize similarities, use more subtle colors. Make sure that visually dominant elements really do represent the most important information and visually downplay less important items. And remember that simplicity is key. Keep your business communication visuals simple. Remember that you are conveying information, not creating artwork. So though it may look really cool, is it really telling the story that you want it to tell? Avoid or remove any decorative elements that clutter the document and don't add any relevant information. So choosing the right visual for the job. So once you've identified which points would benefit most from being presented visually, your next decision is choosing which type of visual to use. For certain types of information, the decision is usually pretty obvious. If you want to present a large set of numeric values or detailed textual information, a table is the obvious choice in most cases. Certain visuals are commonly used for certain applications. So, for example, if your audience is likely to expect line charts and bar charts to show trends in variables or relationships, then choose those. So when you have to present detailed specific information, choose a table. Tables are ideal when the audience needs the information that would be either difficult or tedious to handle in main text. So here is a simple sample table, and this is on page 376 of your textbook. When creating a table, make sure that you use common understandable units and clearly identify them, such as if it's a dollar amount or a percentage amount. Express all items in a column in the same unit and round your numbers off so that it's easier to read them, and label your column headings clearly, and then you can use subheadings if necessary. You want to make sure that you separate your rows and your columns with either lines or spaces, and make your online tables readable on screen as well as in print. And then also document the source of the data using the same format as a text footnote. So next, let's look at line charts and surface charts. Line charts are commonly used to show trends over time or the relationship between two variables. So in line charts, showing trends, the vertical shows the amount and the horizontal shows the time. You can plot just a single line or overlay multiple lines to compare different information or different entities. And 2 or 3 lines on a single chart are usually easy to read, but beyond that, things can get a little confusing, particularly if lines cross. Also, remember to keep into consideration whether or not when this is printed out or published, will it be in black and white or will it be in color? Because on line charts and surface charts, black and white and color can be very different in how readable they are. So make sure that you're taking that into consideration as well. So a surface chart is also sometimes called an area chart and is a form of a line chart with a cumulative effect as all the lines add up to the top line, which represents the total. So this form of chart helps you to illustrate changes in the composition of something over time. And with preparing a surface chart, put the most important segment against the baseline and restrict the number to 4 or 5 different sections. So the line charts and surface charts are great for using trends, and I think that you will find that depending on which business you're in, probably you'll be called on to create this type of information more regularly than probably other types. But once again, it kind of depends on the information, but many companies are interested in what the trend line of information looks like over a period of time, as that gives a better picture of how business is doing. So we do have some samples. This line chart is on page 377, and then this one is this is a surface chart or an area chart, and this one is on page 378 along with some other examples as well. So in addition to line charts and surface charts, you will also find a lot of bar charts in the business world. A bar chart portrays numbers by the height or length, and making a series of numbers easy to grasp quickly, especially as they are compared to one another. And you will find these examples in your book on pages 378 and 379. So I'm going to go through these quickly, and you can take time to review those as you're reading this chapter. These are all examples of bar charts. Okay, let's talk briefly about using a pie chart. It's commonly used for showing how the parts of a whole are distributed. So although pie charts are popular and can quickly highlight the dominant parts of a whole, they're often not as effective as a bar chart or a table. And because you have to label each of the different pieces of the pie, sometimes you'll find that their different visual tools might be more effective. So this is an example, and you can see how each slice of the pie is labeled so that you know what each one of those are. And you can find this example in your book on page 380. So conventional charts and graphs are limited in some ways. Most types can show only a limited number of data points before becoming too cluttered to interpret, which is the whole purpose of using visual, is to make it easier to interpret the information. So they also can't show complex relationships among data points, and they can represent only numeric data. So data visualization can help overcome all of these drawbacks. So unlike charts and graphs, data visualization is less about clarifying individual data points and more about extracting broad meaning from giant masses of data and putting that data in context. So many data visualization tools are also interactive, meaning that you can perform such tasks as zooming in on specific areas or changing the orientation of a display to view it from different angles, or exploring the connections of particular elements within the data set. In addition to displaying large data sets and linkage within data sets, some visualization tools combine data with textual information to communicate complex and dynamic data faster than conventional presentations. So once again, your book has some great examples, and I hope that you'll take time to look at some of these because it'll give you some ideas of the different ways that you can use these tools visually for reports and proposals that you'll be writing. This one in particular is on page 381, as is this one. This is actually a flow chart, and it illustrates a sequence of events from start to finish. So this is a really great tool when illustrating processes or procedures or sequential relationships. This flow chart in particular diagrams a report writing process, and it shows the various elements in the process you want to portray may be represented by pictorial symbols or geographic shapes. Let's talk briefly about maps and drawings, diagrams, infograms, and photographs. So maps can show location, distance, points of interest. In addition, maps are useful for showing market territories or distribution routes or even facility locations. Drawings and diagrams can show an endless variety of business concepts such as network of suppliers in an industry or the process for completing payroll each week. Infographics can convey data as well as concepts or ideas, and then of course photographs offer function as well as decorative value, and nothing can top a photograph when you need to show exact appearances. So there is an example of a map in your book on page 382, and then of an infographic on page 384. And let's move on to learning objective number 4, integrating quality visuals. Explain how to integrate visuals with text effectively and how to verify the quality of your visuals. So after you've chosen the best visuals to illustrate the key points in your report, your website, your presentation, it's time to get creative. So what we're going to talk about in this section offers advice on creative visuals and integrating them into your text and verifying the quality of your visual elements. So let's begin with looking at designing effective visuals. You need to remember that the style and quality of your visual is going to be a subtle message about your relationship with the audience. So have a professional designer set up a template whenever possible. In addition to being well designed, your visual needs to be integrated with the text in the document. First, try to position your visuals so that your audience will not have to flip back and forth in a printed document or scroll up and down on screens between the visual and the text. Second, make sure that you clearly refer to visuals by number in the text of your report before readers encounter them in the document or on screen. And then third, write effective titles, captions, and legends to complete the integration of your text and your visuals. Make sure that you balance your illustration and your words. So strong visuals can enhance the descriptive and persuasive power of your writing, but putting in too many visuals in a report can actually be distracting to your reader. So if you're constantly referring to tables and drawings and other visual elements, the effort to switch back and forth from word to visual can make it difficult for readers to maintain focus on the thread of your message. And unless a visual element clearly stands on its own, visuals should be referred to by number in the text of your report. So some report writers refer to all visuals as exhibits and then number them consecutively throughout the report, and many others number tables and figures separately, which is something that your textbook does, so that's a good example. In a long report with numbered sections, your illustrations have a double number separated by a period or a hyphen, and this represents the section number and the individual illustration number within that section. Once again, your textbook is a really good example of that. All right, and then interpreting visuals. So in writing your titles, your captions, and your legends, it actually provides you another opportunity to connect your visual and your textual message. So a title is similar to a subheading, providing a short description that identifies the content and the purpose of the visual, along with whatever label and number that you're using to refer to that visual. A descriptive title identifies the topic of the illustration, such as a relationship between petroleum demand and refinery capacity. This provides a better idea of what the chart is all about. An informative title tells even more by calling attention to the conclusion that ought to be drawn from the data, such as with the example above that I just gave you, refinery capacity declines as petroleum demand continues to grow. So now you're actually providing information in that by telling your audience what's the conclusion that they're going to get by looking at your graphic. A caption usually offers additional discussion of the visual's content and can be several sentences long or just one sentence. And a legend helps the reader decode the visual by explaining what various colors, symbols, and other design choices mean. And once again, remember whether or not you're going to be printing or presenting in color or in black and white when creating your legends. And finally, verifying the quality of visuals. So visuals have a particularly strong impact on your reader and on their perception of you and of your work. So verifying quality is vital to your credibility. So ask yourself 3 questions. Is the visual accurate? Is it properly documented? And is it honest? Just step back and make sure that your visual communicates truthful messages and doesn't distort the data. All right, that concludes our review of Chapter 12 in looking at the writing step of proposals and reports, and we will pick up with Chapter 13 and we'll look at the 3rd step, which is completing reports and proposals.